Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Dog Whisperer. It is a great and somewhat chilly Thursday afternoon here in New Jersey, and I have a very special guest, former New Jersey State Senator from the 13th Legislative District, Joe Kyrillos. And Joe also, or Senator Kyrillos, I should say, also ran against our very esteemed U.S. Senator Bob Menendez in 2012. Thank you so much for being here, Senator.
Evan, thank you. Thanks for having me.
My
Great
pleasure.
to be on the podcast with you.
So, and it's a pleasure to have you here. So, you
Thank
are
you.
the epitome of a lifetime in public service. You were elected to the assembly in what year? Was it 80?
Well, I don't want to scare all the listeners here and viewers. And you were you weren't even born. I was elected in November of 1987. We elect the state officials here in New Jersey in the odd numbered years. So
Hmm.
I was ripe old age of 27 years old and sworn in January of 1988
So, and how long were you?
to the state assembly.
And you were in the assembly until 92 when you got into the state senate, correct?
That's correct. Right. I
And how
served two
long were you?
terms.
And how long were you in the state senate for?
I was in the Senate for 26 years. So between my two assembly terms and my time in the Senate, I was in the legislature for 30 years. Long time.
Mazel tov on a
A lot,
60.
a whole lifetime for you. A
Yeah,
lifetime plus.
and I don't mean to make
It,
you, but I'm not
it
even.
goes fast.
I'm not 30 years of age yet.
I know you're not.
Yeah. So you work with a lot of governors from Kane to Christie, if I'm correct.
Kane to Christie. Yep. Governor Murphy was sworn in maybe a week, maybe a few days after I left. I think a few days.
And I want to talk about this. You represent, or you represented a significant portion of Monmouth County. Now, Monmouth County, New Jersey is a pretty blue state. Haven't always been blue, but Monmouth County is one of the redder areas in New Jersey. But I wouldn't say it's dark red. I would say it's like a medium rare steak. What do you think of that?
Um, I think Monmouth County is a pretty Republican place, pretty conservative place, pretty traditional place. I assume President Trump, won here handily both times. I think so. I think New Jersey generally was more Republican, more classic Republican in the mainstream way of speaking. When I was first elected, you know, for many cycles, New Jersey elected Republicans for the presidency. Uh, Nixon, Ford, Reagan, Bush. The last Republican to win in a federal year in New Jersey was George Bush Sr. in 1988. So up until then, up until the 1992 Clinton election, New Jersey was a pretty reliable Republican state in the presidential column. Um, we never elected a Republican U.S. senator since I think '72, and we elect some Republican governors along the way by a little bit because in the odd numbered years, it's a different subset of people that come out to vote. I got more votes losing badly in 2012 when I ran for the United States Senate. I got more votes losing than Chris Christie got winning, and certainly his first election and maybe his second election. And that's because it's just a different turnout model. But New Jersey definitely has become, much bluer and much more diverse demographically, and many minority groups are kind of classically by default Democrat voters, which Republicans need to work on. But luckily, and this is a long response to your question. Luckily, even though New Jersey has leaned Democrat a lot in recent years, and maybe to some degree historically. I spent almost half my time in the majority. And my 2 of my 4 years in the assembly, I was in the majority. And in my 26 years in the Senate, it was 10 years in the majority, 2 years in a 50-50 split, 2020 as a word, 20 Republicans, 20 Democrats in the 40-member state Senate. So that's a total of 12 of the 26 years. So, not quite half.
You bring up an excellent point because New Jersey is a pretty Democratic state. You mentioned that there are a lot of immigrants who by default are Democrat. And I was reading your website. You are the son of immigrants, correct?
My father's from Beirut, Lebanon. Yeah, all
Mhm.
four of my grandparents are from Lebanon. My mother was born in West Orange, New Jersey.
Oh,
I
a
was
long way
I was
from Beirut to Orange.
there. You go. And I was born in Kearney, up in Hudson County. My father was a doctor. He was working up at the West Hudson Hospital in Kearney in those days. That's where I was born. So I had something in common with the Hudson County delegation in the legislature. But yeah, listen, like lots of New Jerseyans, like lots of Americans, I'm the son of immigrants. Um, come to America for a better life, and hopefully add to the society and to the country, and make the place stronger. That's what we want.
I've often said that Democrats take immigrant voters for granted and Republicans are stupid for not getting more of them because just because you're Democrat doesn't mean that you're liberal. I myself do not consider myself a liberal. I'm a Democrat, but I'm a conservative Democrat. And I really do feel like there are a lot of issues that many immigrants from all over the world would actually agree with the Republican Party on. Why does the GOP, especially in today's world, have a hard time getting some of these immigrant voters?
I'm not really sure, and really, there's lots of reasons, including just spending time in certain communities, and finding common ground, finding ways to communicate and to connect. It is changing. I'm not an expert on the recent polling, but the Hispanic community and the Black community becoming less democratic, even though it still it still tilts that way, clearly in both camps. But listen, there's lots of conservative people in the Black community, conservative Christian voters there, definitely conservative Catholic, culturally conservative people in the Hispanic community, um, entrepreneurs that favor traditional free market uh, policies of the Republican Party and the Asian Indian community. And so, Evan, you're completely right. When I lost in 2012 against Bob Menendez, I think Mitt Romney and I got 4% of the Black vote in the exit polls. Now, I'm not the waspiest looking guy, and I'm a Lebanese Catholic. I should at least have a shot at some subset of the African American community. And listen, they didn't really know me, and they frankly didn't know Bob Menendez for the most part either. They just voted by default Democrat. So that needs to change, and it'll be in the best interest of all groups to not let anybody think that they have a monopoly on that voting block. So I think it is changing a little bit. It needs to change a lot more, and of course Republicans need to make the case, why it's a strong party. At least a classic Republican Party. The Trump party can be different. Party that believes in the country, believes in the traditions and the institutions of the country, wants a strong economy, and et cetera. And I'm happy that you're a blue dog Democrat. I mean, we need. I think most people form a 65% or maybe more majority coalition where we agree on quite a number of things. Me as a moderate conservative Republican, and you as a conservative or moderately conservative Democrat, we're going to overlap on 75-80% maybe of all issues. We're going to differ on some things, and we can differ on the percentage. Maybe it's not 75%, maybe it's 60%, but it's more than half.
Right.
And that's the way it used to be in our country, and that's the way it used to be in Congress and in state capitals around the country, where people could find some common ground and consensus and drive the society in ways that we all want to achieve. Strong communities, strong schools, jobs for people, prosperous incomes, and bright futures. And it's a very, very turbulent world right now, both here and abroad.
Well, you mentioned your race against Bob Menendez. How often did your campaign, when you ran for the U.S. Senate, go into some of these majority Black or Latino communities in places like Paterson, Newark? Because I get what you're saying, but like a lot of Republicans would say it's a waste of time because a lot of the individuals in these neighborhoods would never consider voting for Republican, even though Tom Kaine, I believe, won all but 3 towns in New Jersey when he ran for re-election in the 80s.
Well, I did spend time in Newark and throughout Essex County and into Hudson County, but you can never spend enough time to really connect, and you need to be able to advertise and with the right media, and I never had the money to do that. I did raise $1 million a quarter for about 5 quarters, which is quite a lot for a federal election in a state like New Jersey, in a race that no one thought I could win. But it's not really enough. When we run for governor in New Jersey, where there's public financing and a public match of 2 for 1, so your $5 million becomes $15 million. You can take corporate money, not just individual money, and so it's much easier money. And Tom Kaine did very well his second time, but the advantage of incumbency is there, where you can really connect with communities, appoint diverse people to boards and commissions and jobs. And I thought to myself that, if I was elected to the Senate, I'd pick a different church every Sunday and go visit around the state, particularly in urban areas. When I go to historically African American churches in Newark, for example, it's very inspiring. It's very uplifting. I love going, and it hasn't happened more than a handful of times, but there's been times I've had the chance, and Buster Soares' church in Franklin Township, and up in Newark, sometimes for funeral services and whatnot. So I think had I been elected, I would have had a shot to do better. But it's hard sometimes as a fresh face.
Right. Well, Reverend Buster has been very inspiring within the Republican community and even the Black community. I think he either spoke or was at one of the Republican conventions for, I think, Bob Dole, who obviously did not do well with the Black community. But the Black community loved Bill Clinton. I got to be honest, I'm not Black, but I love Bill Clinton as well. He's my favorite president. In fact,
I like it. I like Bill Clinton. I'm looking at a picture of Susan Kyrillos, my wife, and me, and Hillary Clinton. And as I speak at this very moment, on my office wall, we had a chance to go to the White House, I think the last year of the Clinton presidency, and Hillary was the first lady at the time, as well before she was a U.S. Senator or Secretary of State. She was very nice to us and took a nice picture, and I have it on the wall with other presidents, President Reagan, the Bushes, and people would come to my office. And I think I had a picture of Governor Florio when he was governor, and I signing a bill of mine. When people came to my office from time to time, whether it was the early days when I think Florio was up, or now with Hillary, they would act with great shock. And why would you have her picture up? And I would say, listen, not now because I'm not in office now. I've been out for 6 years. It's gone pretty fast, but I'd say, hey, listen, I represent all the people, including Democrats, including independents and Republicans, and we're all Americans. So listen, there's plenty that she says that I don't agree with that necessarily. I like what she says for the most part on foreign policy stuff, but
Of course, yeah.
I'm not a student of everything she said, and there's some style things that I would do differently, and some people don't like her. I could understand why, but probably would have been a good president.
I agree with you. She was my first vote. And I wanted to ask, which governor, I mean, because you work with many governors, some of our listeners may not be from New Jersey, so they may not be familiar with our governors, but which governor did you enjoy working with the most during your time in the Senate or Assembly?
Well, you know what, I worked with them all in such different times and contexts. Obviously everyone loves Governor Kane, and I do too. And I know you were at the recent Monmouth University
I sure was.
seminar that I did with Senator Gopal, and we had 3 former governors, Kane, McGreevey, and Cody. And so, Governor Kane is such a statesman and a role model. But I was a young kid when he was governor. I mean, his last 2 years were my first 2 years. I was 27, 28, 29 years old. So, I did work with him to some degree and his people, and he signed some of my bills and one of them publicly in a big way. But, I was pretty green, and I worked pretty closely with Christy Whitman. She was the governor for 7 years, and kind of prime years for me because I was in the Senate majority, chairing committees. So I did work with her and her people pretty closely. I'm sure not everybody thought she had the best relationship with the legislature. She would agree with that. But I enjoyed working with both of them in the ways that I did. McGreevey was there for, I guess, 2 years, maybe 3 before he resigned, and I was the state party chairman. I was the Republican chairman during that time frame. And I had served with Jim in the Senate, and we'd gone to Israel together, and so I knew him more as a peer. And it was a more political time and more partisan time, and there was a lot of excess in the McGreevey years that I think Jim would agree with today. And I was in a different role. I was the Republican state chairman, so I was more partisan than what my probably normal nature might be, because that was part of the job. Although I got criticized by the Republican side for not being partisan enough, I tried to be a Republican chairman that all New Jerseyans would say, well, the Republican guy makes a lot of sense, but a lot of rank and file Republicans want you to be the Republican chairman for Republicans only, not for the public at large, which means a little bit rougher and tougher than is typically my style. But so that was an awkward era, and Jim made some mistakes, which he's acknowledged, and we're friends now, and not that we weren't then, but you saw us on stage when we spoke at Monmouth recently. So Jim's a good guy, and he's, I think, probably going to be the mayor of Jersey City. I hope he wins. And then Dick Cody came as the acting governor. Dick was a colleague, obviously, from the Senate. We worked closely together. I knew him well, and I'm forgetting Governor DeFrancesco, who served for a year when Christie went to the cabinet, went to President Bush's cabinet as EPA administrator. So Donnie was there for maybe 13 months or something like that. And Don and I were and are great friends. It was Don who actually asked me at first to be the Republican state chairman, and asked the Republican State Committee to elect me. Then I got reelected a couple more times thereafter, but served a total of 4 years. But so and then Corzine, I really didn't have a much of a rapport with, to be honest with you.
I can imagine that. I don't like Corzine either, and I'm a Democrat.
Yeah, yeah. It's not, it's not that I don't like him personally. He's fine, man, I guess. I don't know him well. Our paths would cross from time to time, and we had, we had pretty thin minorities in those days. I can't remember, but we were really out, and I was getting kind of bored and frustrated in the Senate in those days, and having been there a while, being in the minority, being in the majority is a much different job than being in the minority. I can tell you that. It's the title might be might be the same, but the job is very different. Right around that time, I was asked by my friend Chris Christie to chair his campaign for governor, and I knew Chris quite well. And 2009, we launched a successful campaign, so that kind of reinvigorated me, and I got pretty involved, obviously, in that effort. We were successful, and Chris went on to serve 2 terms as governor. And a little bit of an awkward construct when you're in the minority in the legislature, as we were, but have the party, have your party in power in the governorship. And so, it can be a little tricky sometimes. And Chris demanded a lot of loyalty from people, and to some degree, I helped enforce that. And to some degree, I thought it was a little excessive at times, and probably conducted myself as such. And so, I had a good and different relationship with all the governors, depending on the moment in time, depending on where I was in the hierarchy of things. So it's hard to compare.
I get that. And when you said that some of the Republicans wanted you to be the chairman only for the Republican, I thought that's a suicide mission in a state like New Jersey, because we've gone the longest without sending someone from the Republican Party to the U.S. Senate. And you're right. I think the last one was Clifford Case. And not to make anyone feel old, but that was my father's very first election. So
Your father's very first election. When he voted in that election?
he did. He did. He was one of
Yeah.
3 who voted for McGovern.
Good. Well, I don't feel that bad, because I was only 12 in 1972. So, so I actually feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask real quickly, a lot has come, hindsight's 2020, and unfortunately you were not elected to the Senate. I think a lot of people, myself included, had wish that you had won against Menendez. But are you surprised about what's come out about your former opponent?
Well, it's all pretty brazen, right? I mean, so, I served with Bob in the assembly. We were sworn into the state assembly on the very same day. And so we knew each other, during our assembly days. He left before I did. He went to the state Senate maybe a year or more before I went to the state Senate. We overlapped in the state Senate for a little time, not much, a year or two. And then he went to Congress after that, and served in the House before he was elected to the U.S. Senate. And listen, I thought in 2010, early 11, after Republicans won the House in Washington, that Mitt Romney, who I knew fairly well, and I love Mitt, and I served as Mitt's New Jersey chairman in 2007, 8, not the year he ran as the nominee, but the year he lost to John McCain. And so I knew him well, and I thought Mitt could keep it close against Barack Obama, but I was obviously very, very wrong. Mitt got destroyed. I got destroyed. And Mitt lost New Jersey by the most since Barry Goldwater in 1964. And Goldwater got killed by Lyndon Baines Johnson that year. I was 4 years old, but, middle of the Vietnam War.
I wasn't even a fetus, so.
And you were, you weren't even a thought in your parents' mind in those days. So, so it was just a bad year. And, I appreciate your saying you wanted me to win, and other people wanted me to win. And listen, lots of people voted for me, but a lot more people voted for him. And I always felt like I had a chance, because, we talked about Republicans talking to their own people too much. Yeah, I won the white vote statewide. I won white women statewide. handily, like 55% of the vote.
Yeah.
But I got killed in these minority communities, and so the echo chamber was playing in my ears and Republicans' ears. That's why Republicans think every year, oh, that we can win this race, we can win that race, and they lose badly. But am I surprised? Bob's had some brushes in the past, as we know, but I'm surprised of the brazenness of it, right?
Yeah.
Cash in the sleeves, in the closet, and gold bars, and it's amazing to me when you hear him speak publicly about it. He speaks so convincingly of his innocence.
It's arrogance is what
I'm really going to be curious to see how this plays out. And it's almost as if he really believes that what happened was not wrong. But look, it is what it is. We'll see it play out, and obviously there's going to be a different U.S. senator come next January.
Well, I'm not going to call Bob Menendez a criminal because he's innocent until proven guilty, but I think a lot of convicted criminals view themselves as good guys too. If we released everyone from prison who claims I didn't do anything, we'd have no more prisons.
Well, we'd have smaller populations. How about that? I'm sure there's a lot of people that know that they did bad things, but we'll find out. We'll find out. It's not pretty, and it's not what any of us want to see.
Are you surprised that it took this long for something like this to come out about Bob Menendez, or did you expect it to happen sooner?
Well, I did think it would happen sooner. And in 2012, we got lots of reports of, a lot of awkward, at a minimum, or wrongdoing that eventually emerged after the campaign, and news outlets sat on it. The same people that ran pretty rough stories in 2013 and 14, and I forget when he went on trial. Maybe it was, I forget the year, but all the stuff that has happened to him up until this most current episode all really unfolded after the 2012 election. So, I know, the New York Post, ABC News, other people had stuff, and I was waiting for it to break. If I break it, it's just political, and it wasn't going to play anyway, because it didn't play, because they had it and didn't run with it. So best for some good investigative reporter to put it out there, but it never did surface.
I want to ask, what do you think of?
I would have lost anyway. As it turned out, I think the way that contest shaped up with Obama and Mitt, but it would have been closer. And if we didn't have Hurricane Sandy, which decimated the Republican counties of Monmouth and Ocean, Atlantic, really depressed the vote. No electricity for 11 days. Happened 6 days, 8 days before Election Day. Happened on a Sunday. The election was the subsequent Tuesday, 9 days later, whatever it was. Still no electricity. No, when I went to vote, my machine didn't. I had to write my own name in because there was no electricity for the voting machines.
I'm sorry. I really could have pushed.
So I think it probably cost us 5-6 points. That's what my pollster Adam Geller is, very well known and respected pollster around the country. Think cost us. Would have been a decisive loss, but wouldn't have been as deep.
Did you you had to write in Mitt Romney's name too in that election? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had to fill out like a paper ballot.
Wow, amazing. Did you I'm trying to think. What do you think of Andy Kim?
I've never met him. I've never met Andy Kim, and there's not too many people in New Jersey that I don't know, to fairly good degree. But he's a new member of Congress, and we never have crossed paths. I did meet a couple of his senior staff guys, and They were good guys, good people. And listen, I give him a lot of credit. I can't figure out if he's a real left-wing ideologue, as some of the progressive groups have him portrayed, and why he did so well against Tammy Murphy when Tammy was a candidate, or if he's a more normal centrist guy, as his work with former Republican Senator Richard Lugar, and that think tank that Lugar started, which I think is mostly on foreign policy issues, so I'm not really sure if he's more like that. So, I'm kind of watching. I did note that when Lugar died, he put out, and Richard Lugar was a great statesman from Indiana, and a moderate conservative Republican, former chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and Kim, I somehow was associated with the think tank. Put out a really, emotional statement when Lugar died. The only reason I know that he did that years ago is because the Clinton campaign, or the Tammy campaign, but Tammy's a friend of mine, by the way, but the campaign put out a hit on him that shows he's not really a good Democrat. So, as somebody that wants to deal with everybody in life, as I think you do, Evan, that appealed to me. So I'm watching Kim to see how he does in life. I'm for his opponent, who's a friend of mine as well, Curtis Bashaw. I happened to be with him last night. I know Curtis well. Susan and I have traveled with some mutual friends and Curtis to Italy years ago. I spent time at his hotel then at Congress Hall in Cape May, which is a beautiful hotel. And, Curtis would make a really good U.S. Senator. We'll see how it goes. He's got a tough mission. He knows that. And I'll be helping Curtis and raise some money for him along the way.
Well, I know that Andy's a very moralistic politician. I don't care if he's a progressive or a centrist. I just care that he cares, and that's why I love Andy. And wanted to ask, what do you think of Trump v. Biden? What do you think the biggest issue is going to be that will make or break the election for either candidate?
Well, I think that the die is cast in most of the states, right? I think it's down to 8 or 9 swing states. I forget. You can count for me, right? Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and that's it. Those places are going to be razor thin one way or the other. If Trump were just the least bit a gentleman in ways that he hasn't been or isn't, he would have won last time. I mean, he barely won the first time. He barely lost the second time. And, if he didn't beat up on the Bushes all the time, they wouldn't have to spend so much money down in Florida to make sure he won there, where Jeb Bush was the former governor. They could have used some of that money in Georgia or North Carolina, where they barely lost. If they didn't beat up on John McCain for 8 years, they might have won Arizona, where they barely lost. So, I think the country's pretty concerned now with the direction, culturally, economically. Joe Biden had a chance to kind of be a centrist, moderate guy that could bridge people together, which is how he was elected. He portrayed himself that way. Had he not portrayed himself that way, he wouldn't have won against Trump. But people thought he'd be, the comfortable uncle that would kind of make things normal again. But he didn't do that. In my judgment, anyway, Evan, he really let the hard left take over a lot of decision making, a lot of personnel picks, a lot of direction. A soft kind of drifting foreign policy, and Afghanistan pullout being the debacle that it was. So, I think Donald Trump has a really good chance. And
I agree with you. I hate to say it.
So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But it's just a bizarre moment in time in none of us could have ever predicted. I feel bad for young guys like you who haven't really watched a lot of politics, and you're a little bit older than, you know, some kids that are voting for the first time, or that maybe the second time, and they don't really have the history to understand just how different this is. And they're entering adulthood in the middle of this social media moment in time, and the hyper partisanship and just the domination of extremes both on left and right, that is not, in my judgment, classically American, and hasn't built the institutions that we so have to cherish and appreciate in the country. So it's a very tough time.
Well, we're out of time, but I thank you, Senator Kyrillos. JoeKyrillos.com is your website.
It is, Evan. Thank you. We're great pleasure to be with you. Really enjoyed it, and good luck with.
Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you.